We're sisters, best friends, and authors on a mission to help you stoke your creative fire and live the life of your dreams. We believe that purpose fuels passion and that creativity is your secret weapon for mass construction. There's never been a better time to bless the world with your dream realized. You're listening to The Kate and Abbie Show. What's up, guys? Welcome back to The Kate and Abbie Show. This is episode 40, and today we're debunking 7 common writing myths, stereotypes that float around in the writing world and actually do damage to new writers who believe them. So, in this episode, we're going to prove those myths wrong and reveal the writing truths on the flip side. Practical advice that will actually help you a lot on your writing journey. Before we get started, we have to thank our sponsors who are you. That's right, you guys keep this show going. You're the ones who support us, and we appreciate it so much. So if you get value out of this podcast, go to patreon.com/The Kate and Abbie Show and help us keep this show alive and free of interruptions. Okay, let's get right into it. Myth number 1 is you have to be good at writing to be a good writer. And by good at writing, I mean like prose, writing actual prose and being lyrical and technically good.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a big myth.
Yeah.
That deters most people from even trying from the start.
And then it's like everyone's standard of what's good is different.
Right.
It'd be like saying, oh, if you can't sing opera, you can't sing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it depends on what kind of singing you like there, you know? That disqualifies a lot of people.
Yeah, it does.
It's the same with writing. What is good writing? You know?
Totally subjective.
Completely subjective.
Yeah.
Like, it's so subjective, we could stop right here and not even talk about this one anymore.
I know.
Because it's a stupid concept.
It really is.
And some of the best writing, and we've said this before, some of the best writing out there that has changed the world on fundamental levels was written by people who wouldn't consider themselves writers. So think about that. Some historical things that were written by people who went through wars and stuff. They weren't writers.
Yeah.
They weren't, spending their days making Pinterest boards for their WIP. Something happened that made them need to write a story. And that's what writing should be, as a mechanism to tell a story, not to try to reach some elevated pedestal of what someone else thinks is good.
Right, exactly. And what all those people have, what all good books have, what all good stories have, is that they make you feel something. And to me, that's the only thing you should want your writing to do.
Right.
As far as the actual prose
Right.
and the actual quality of the writing should make you feel something, should make your reader feel something.
Right.
That should be your only goal.
Exactly.
You know?
If writing doesn't make you feel anything, if it doesn't convey an emotion, if it doesn't touch your readers, what is it doing? What is it for?
Exactly. Exactly. So that's it right there. Let's move on to the next one. Myth number 2, your plot has to be unique. That's one that I see in all of the generic writing advice.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to think of a unique plot. Oh, what about your plot is different from everybody else's? Nothing. Nothing. Literally, it will be nothing.
That should be on the list of fastest ways to depress yourself about your own writing.
Exactly.
1, how is your plot unique from everyone else's?
It's not, because pretty much everything's been done before.
These are the questions we hear in our head while we're trying to get to sleep at night. These are like the haunting voices in our heads.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your plot's unique. That's not important because there are no unique plots.
You can go on, I was going to say Wattpad, but you could do this in a bookstore too. But let's just use Wattpad as an example. You could go on Wattpad and just scroll through any genre. Okay, let's say contemporary YA romance. And pretty much every single story, same with published books, looks like the same thing. a lot of them have the same premise. Why? I can't tell you how many like fake dating stories I've seen on Wattpad and also published, and they all kind of copy each other more or less.
Right.
Not knocking anybody who's written a fake dating story. I mean, I've done the same thing and I quite enjoy them, but it's a premise that people like. So if you choose that premise for your book, that doesn't make it bad. That doesn't make it not unique. That doesn't make it unoriginal and lousy, you know?
Yeah.
It just means that you are writing a specific niche.
Right.
I think it's more of a niche thing.
It's not the plot that people even care about.
Exactly.
Like, for example, we've talked about this with the Marvel franchise.
Yeah.
And a lot of the plots in Marvel films are very, very, very similar. And no one cares. We come to these films for the characters. And that when you visit any YouTube video, fan page, a social media thing, people aren't like, wow, you know what my favorite thing about Captain America was how unique the plot was.
Yeah.
Or Thor or whatever. They like the characters. It's
Right.
always about the characters.
It's
It's never
the
about,
characters.
you know what my favorite thing was the unique plot. The unique plot just blew me away. No one cares. They care about the character, what the character made them feel. And when you can get someone to latch onto a character and identify with them and love that character, they don't care if it's like, oh, we're going to watch him jump off buildings for, 5 movies.
Right.
We're going to watch him try
Exactly.
to defeat the same bad guy for 5 movies or more. We don't care because what we're interested in is the character and his
Right.
internal conflict.
Exactly.
So that the plot doesn't matter. It's like, we've said this several times about, that quote about how there's really only like 7 storylines.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. There's really not a lot of storylines and it doesn't matter. It's about the uniqueness of the characters and not even so much the uniqueness, but their internal conflict
Right.
and how people
Which is
can
really what
connect
makes them
with
unique.
that. Right. That's
Yeah.
what makes them unique.
Yeah. That's the only thing that's relatable about them. And it's pretty much the only thing that's going to make them unique. So that is the best thing to focus on for sure.
And I think that's not even what people aren't even looking for. Like, oh, I relate to this. I like this character because they're unique. They're unique. I
Right.
like this character because I can relate to them.
Right. And you can relate to them because they have conflict.
Right.
They have something they want. They have something they're afraid of. They have a misbelief that drives their actions. They're like you. They're human.
Right.
You know?
So that's the thing. It's not so much trying to write something like what's something no one's done with a character. It's
Yeah.
what is someone going to connect with.
Right. And a lot of times it's going to be something that has been done quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that might even be an aspect of the relatability.
Right.
So
And the
don't shy
uniqueness
away
will
from
come
that.
with your own voice that you're writing in.
Yeah.
What you write isn't going to be, you see things differently than how anyone else will. So if you're genuinely wondering like, well, is there absolutely nothing unique about my book? No. There is. There is something unique
Yeah.
about your book. And what's unique about your book is you writing it, because no one's going to write this particular story exactly as you will.
Right. Yeah. Well said. Myth number 3 is you need to write every day. And I know we've talked about this one quite a few times, but it's a popular piece of advice, especially given to beginner writers, and I don't think it's a good piece of advice. It is good to get into a habit of writing, and we have a whole episode on that, so go look at that one, go listen to that one if you haven't already, how to get in a habit of writing. It is good to build a habit of writing. But if you're forcing yourself to write every day because you feel like you're not a legitimate writer if you don't write every day, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons and you're probably quickly going to dislike it. So me and Kate have talked about this before, but we don't write every day. We write when we feel like it. We write when we have the opportunity to. And there are tons of factors that come into play with having a day devoted to writing or having even just a few hours set aside for writing. So if you don't get to write every day or you don't feel like writing every day, that does not make you less of a writer. Absolutely not. You should write regularly, but when you feel like it, when you feel inspired.
Right. And it's skipping a day of writing or taking a break or not writing every day does not make you fall out of the habit of writing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like working out.
right.
You really shouldn't work out every single day. And if you are like, okay, I take rest days on, this day and this day, it's like, okay, well, it's not like, oh, I don't work out anymore. All my muscles went away overnight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's still there and it's still serving you, but it actually serves you better to not do it every day because you burn yourself out. And it's the same. And I know we're talking about the physical body with working out, but the mental and emotional body is the same way. You can burn yourself out very similarly by making yourself do the same thing over and over and over and over again without any rest days. Yeah. And I've found for myself, making sure that I am taking care of myself, mind, body, and spirit, and taking time to just enjoy my book, whether that's spending the day thinking about it or, making vision boards for it. Even if it's not specifically writing it, I'm always spending time in my book nourishing the story so that I can write it well. And I think those periods of nourishment outside of just writing are important.
Yeah, for sure. Because you have to rest you have to fill your cup in order to get anything out of it.
Right.
Which, go watch not our last one, but the one before it. If you're looking for some self-care ideas for writers, we shared all of our self-care ideas, all the things we do to take care of ourselves and our minds and bodies to write better.
Yeah, that was a good episode.
Yeah.
Lots of good self-care tips in there.
Myth number 4 is about characters, and it is your characters have to be likable. And this is more of like a popular idea that I've seen. It's not really so much writing advice, but it's kind of I guess it is writing advice because I've seen a lot of people advise writers. Asking them like, what makes your character likable? Your character has to be likable, but that's actually not true. And we've talked about this before, that your characters really don't have to be likable. They don't have to even try to be nice.
Right. Yeah.
They don't have to be like these morally perfect cherubs that everybody can root for and they're just perfect. Actually, that's a bad idea to make them perfect. Obviously, they have to be conflicted. They can't be flawless. They have to have flaws.
The flawless character is a character that you don't feel connected with
exactly.
at all.
You can't relate to them. So the thing is, you have to be able to relate to your characters. Your audience has to be able to relate to your characters and they have to care about them. So what I mean by this is that you can care about characters who aren't likable by definition. Case study Sherlock.
Right.
I actually want to do a whole case study on that. I want to do a case study type of thing on like unlikable characters because I've seen this and like it's an interesting dichotomy. Because you have characters, and I could name more, but there's a lot of characters who you like them and you root for them, even though they're not really likable. And so that's unexplainable under the advice of, oh, your characters have to be likable in order for your audience to like them. Well, then why do we like the unlikable characters?
Right. You know? Like, I'm thinking of like Lady Mary, Downton Abbey.
Yeah.
Like at least the first season.
Yeah, she's unlikable
actually, her and Edith are both kind of unlikable characters for most of that season.
Right.
But yeah, you're still kind of rooting for both of them.
Right.
And when they hit stumbling blocks, you feel bad for them. You want them to be able to succeed. But they really do a lot of things that aren't very nice to each other and to other people. And you're kind of like, wow, dang.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
So, but you can see how they're both so conflicted.
Exactly.
So that's what makes you care about them. So above and beyond anything else, your characters have to be conflicted so that your readers, your audience cares about them, but they don't have to necessarily be likable. They don't even have to try to be nice people. Obviously, you can have protagonists who are the heroic type, but they still have to be conflicted.
Yeah.
So I think you shouldn't shy away from having your characters be a little bit unlikable sometimes. Myth number 5 is you need to write a detailed outline before you write your book. And I know that sounds really weird coming from me because I write very detailed outlines, as everybody knows. I love outlining. I love getting super detailed with my outlines, and I advise other people to do the same if they want to, but that's the clause there, is that if you want to. So I think the flip side truth of this is you should only outline as much as you feel you need to, just to like orient yourself. Orientate. Are they the same things? I don't know. Just to know where you're going, basically, is what I mean. Like, have a sense of where you're going, which I know you have a completely different process, and we've talked about this before. But even you make notes to yourself sometimes to just like get an idea of where you're going.
Yeah.
You know, not always, but like usually to understand the complexity of what's happening.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. It depends on the book and the story itself, and it depends on where I'm at. Usually I can write a lot of words before I need to pause and be like, okay, where am I? And then I sometimes will jot down, if I know I'm like, okay, what happens is this. I'll like jot those things down real fast. Like I'm talking about a bullet point list. Like the character goes to his friend's house. At his friend's house, this happens. Because of this, this happens. And then we have, you know, the end climax, whatever. You know what I mean? Very quickly like that with almost no more words. And then if it's something culture related, which is something I've done more of in this book because it's a high fantasy that I usually don't do, is like, okay, language notes and what does this culture of creatures know about that culture of creatures?
Right.
And these are things that aren't even going to be in the book. You know what I mean? But these are things I need to know.
Yes. Exactly.
So little things like that, I will jot down as I go because I don't want to forget them. But most of the time, I consider myself to be a very visionary writer is how I describe it, because I've never really been able to relate to plotter or pantser because it's hard to even say because again, they're subjective. There's no like exact definitions, but I get a vision of what I want the story to be, and I see almost the entire thing in my head, and it's there all the time, and I'm just like living it, and then writing what I'm seeing every single day. And it's not like I'm like, what's going to happen next? But I'm also not like, oh, let me take all of this and write it down, because it just like doesn't feel right for me to do that. So that's just been, and I know it's kind of weird. Like a lot of people are like, oh, you know, I can't relate to that at all, which is fine. And like you were just saying, I think the beauty of it is being able to realize that your process can be unique and that it doesn't have to match. And the thing is, what you talk about on your YouTube channel, anybody can apply those principles. For example, I apply them in my books all the time without even really consciously thinking about it, because once you learn about what makes a story come alive to you, you start incorporating those things. So even if you don't follow like a structure that you're writing out, or like filling out a template or something, or writing it all down in a notebook, and you're still introducing these principles of internal conflict and, you know, how the story is flowing, that's what's going to make your story flourish, regardless of how you attack it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make total sense, because there are a lot of ways to do a thing, and there's no one-size-fits-all method, for sure. So I like to take the pressure off of people listening, and also people who watch my channel, because you don't have to outline as intensely as I do, or as some people do. Okay, so it's all down to your process. And your process is, I think, a cool moment of self-discovery when you start to learn what your process is and what works for you. And like you were saying, the more you do it, the more it comes natural to you. So it will just start to come natural to you what works the best for you. So I think that it's important not to stress out too much about, oh, I need to outline, or I need to, you know, make all these notes or follow this template. Yes, the templates can be a good guide, but don't feel like you need to get super detailed. I love that you said the bullet point list thing, because that's what I always recommend to pantsers or people who aren't used to outlining, who want to try outlining or try the 3-act story structure, but they're not sure how to attack it. And I always advise, just make a bullet point outline. Like, just take the 3-act story structure as a bullet point, like bullet points, and just vaguely write in what you think would happen in each point of the structure. And you can literally just go with that. Like for some writers, your talent will fill in the gaps. It won't have to be like this strenuous process of trying to figure out every single detail, because sometimes those things just come to you as you're writing. It really depends on the type of writer you are. And the more you do it, the more it comes natural to you.
Yeah, and I think it also has to do with your personality. Like, I mean, our personalities are so different. Like, you really enjoy lists and planning and having a lot of structure, whereas I am not very structured. And I don't really write anything down or plan anything. It sounds bad when you say it aloud, even though it isn't, I don't know why I laugh, but, so it's a personality thing.
Yes.
So for someone like you who plans a lot, it would feel uncomfortable to write and not have that planning out first aspect.
Can you imagine an Enneagram 1 writing a book without any plan? Oh my gosh, nightmare. But I think it's to practice spontaneous writing sometimes, I think.
Yeah, like you write spontaneous?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, so I think it's good to do both. And it's kind of like what came to my mind as you were saying this was like photography. When you first start out learning photography, you learn a lot about how to frame up a shot and composition and lighting and all this stuff. But like once you really get into it and that stuff gets ingrained into you, you don't have to stop every single time and be like, is the lighting, all right, what was I supposed to do with the lighting? How do you frame it up? And, look at the book and stuff. So a lot of it after a while becomes ingrained. And I think that's what you've seen with your own writing, is that these principles just become second nature and sort of just flow right out.
Yeah, they really do. It's a cool process. Myth number 6 is you have to satisfy your reader. And this is something that we've touched on in the past, and I think we should do like a whole podcast on it, or I'll do a whole video on it someday maybe. Finding this equilibrium, this balance between satisfying your reader and also leaving a little bit of intrigue, unanswered questions type of thing.
Right.
You can definitely play with that balance, especially in like a series, or if there's going to be a continuation of the story. You don't have to satisfy you don't have to satisfy the reader completely.
Right.
You can leave some loose ends, you can leave some open doors and come back and build off of that.
Exactly.
I've just heard this advice thrown around of like, you have to satisfy your reader, satisfy your audience. But what does that even mean? Like, yeah, you need to satisfy them somewhat.
Right. But
you shouldn't satisfy them completely. We were talking about this one time in a podcast and you used the example of a restaurant. Yeah. I think.
Yes.
Like, you don't want them to like go away hungry, but you also want them to want to come back for more.
No, like, oh my gosh, I ate so much food at this one meal. I don't ever want to eat here again,
Yeah.
So you want it to be like, oh, that was so good. I want to have that again.
Yeah, exactly.
Not like you
want them coming back for more.
Ate a whole cake and now I'm done with that place forever. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like you want them to be excited to come back for more. And that's what I think makes literature addictive.
Yes.
Is that right amount of satisfying the reader but making them hungry for more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a balance. Yeah. For sure. Myth number 7 is the final myth. You're too young to publish a book.
Never too young.
Never too young.
Never too young.
This misbelief that there's a such thing as being too young to publish a book, or feeling disqualified because you're young or you're a teenager. Don't. Actually go listen to our podcast on advice for teen writers, because that was one of them, is not feeling disqualified because you're young, or maybe you're even younger than a teenager. And you should never feel like, oh, I'm too young to publish a book or to put my work out there, even if it's not publishing it in a physical book. It might be publishing it online or just sharing it with somebody, but especially publishing, because I think there's this stereotype of you have to achieve a certain like amount of experience in writing or publishing or putting your work out there before you can be qualified to publish a book.
There are no qualifications.
Yeah. Especially if you're in indie publishing. If you're indie publishing, you know, like you don't need anybody's approval. You don't need anybody's permission. Okay. If you want to do it, just do it.
Right.
And the game has totally changed. The
Completely.
Gatekeepers are gone. And it's a really very cool time to be a writer.
Yeah, there's never been a better time to be a writer.
Yeah. To quote one of our favorite podcasts.
Yeah. Self-publishing formula. If you haven't listened to that, go listen to it, because that's full of great advice if you are going the indie path. Lots of good advice there. But yeah, you're never too young. You're never too young to start putting your work out there. That's how we started. We started putting our work out there online when we were quite young. Got lots of great feedback, really encouraged us and fueled us forward in our writing career. And I think it can really do just that. And as far as being afraid, like, oh, what if it's not good enough? Edit your own work.
Yeah.
Keep writing, keep getting experience. Have someone you trust and who wants the best for your writing help you read, like beta read and edit your work. And that's going to be putting your best foot forward.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So there you have it. 7 most common writing myths debunked. And comment below and tell us if you have believed any of these myths and if you feel a little bit more liberated now that you know they're not true. And tell us your thoughts. Tell us what you thought of this episode. As always, give it a big thumbs up if you're on the YouTube version. If you haven't seen the video on YouTube, go to Kate's channel, which is youtube.com/KAEmmons, and check out the video version of this podcast. We think you'll like it. Share it with a friend who might need it, who might believe some of these myths and needs to debunk them. Again, thank you to our patrons for keeping this show going. If you get value out of this show, go to patreon.com/The Kate and Abbie Show and help us keep this show alive and interruption free. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for all of your support. Thanks for listening, and we will see you in the next one. Until then,
Stay stoked
and rock on.